Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Drop. Greg Wyshynski, Arda, Öcal, here with you after every Stanley Cup Final game. And there may only be one more, Wish, because the Florida Panthers are up 3-0 in the series after defeating the Edmonton Oilers in Edmonton by a final score of 4-3. They were up 4-1, Wish. The Oilers clawed back. They did get 2 goals, but it was too little too late as the Florida Panthers hold on to win. Your biggest takeaway from Game 3 is?
That this is a disaster for the Oilers. Like, I understand the final score is going to look better than it is. But there's no getting around the fact that they had home ice. They had this incredibly loud crowd behind them. My God, it was wonderful to watch a Stanley Cup final game in Canada. It pains me as an American to say that, but it is really an experience to be here and feel the energy. And they come out and they play pretty well. But in the first period, Arda, they had power play chances. They had clean looks for Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, including Draisaitl getting his patented one-timer on Bobrovsky, who made an awesome save. And then they give up the game's first goal, which deflated everybody. Now, they got it back at the beginning of the second, but then the real disaster struck, which is when they gave up 3 goals in a span of, what was it, like 6-7 minutes to the Panthers, 2 on egregious turnovers, and then another on a 2-1-1 break that they allowed to start deep within their attacking zone. I know the final score is what it is. I know they could probably hold their heads high that they didn't quit in the game, but this was abject disaster for the Edmonton Oilers in Game 3.
Yeah, now's a good time to say there's only ever been one reverse sweep in Stanley Cup Final history, and that was in 1942. Shout out to the Toronto Maple Leafs. When the Stanley Cup looked a lot different, they did that against the Red Wings.
Well, let's talk about that, because here's the thing. That's true. The only reverse sweep that happened was 1942. There's been 28 series. So the teams that have gone up 3-0 have won 27 of 28. But here's the hill for the Oilers. Of the 28 series, 20 of them ended in sweeps, and then 25 of the 28 were gentlemen's sweeps, where the final blow came in Game 5. So, like, that's what's ahead of them. I give full marks to the delightful Stuart Skinner, who had a egregious turnover in Game 3 that led to what was a critical goal in the second period that got that whole rally started for Florida. He said, and this is beautiful, "It is disappointing being down 3-0. We've got to let that reality sink in. I'm not too sure what the stats are in coming back, but if anyone can do it, it's the Oil." So there you go. A lot of belief, delusional as it is, Arda, in the Edmonton room.
Yeah, funny how you were talking about the confidence and the belief, no scintilla of doubt, as you said, for the Panthers, but now Stuart Skinner saying similar things. Let me ask you this question, okay? So a lot's being made right now about the fact that the 5 top scorers for the Oilers do not have a goal in this series.
Yes. Okay?
How much of that is Sergei Bobrovsky is just playing amazing, and how much of that is these players are not stepping up to the level that they need to be?
It's a combination of both. I mean, when your top 5 scorers, I would say, I mean, you have top 5 scorers. Only one of them, Connor McDavid, has a point in the series. None of them have goals in the series. That has got to be on them in some way, shape, or form. Now, yes, Bobrovsky has been really good in games 1 and 3, especially early on tonight. The 5-man defensive unit that Paul Maurice has deployed against Connor McDavid's line when he can has been terrific in keeping that line in check. But Leon Draisaitl came into this series with 28 points in 18 games, and he doesn't have a point in this series. At some point, and he said it himself, Arda, at some point you got to look in the mirror and say that I've got to be better, because it's simply not just what the Panthers are doing to these top scorers on Edmonton. When Warren Foegele has more goals than McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, Bouchard, and Nugent Hopkins combined, that's how you get in the 3-0 hole, baby.
Yeah, you are absolutely right about that. And I'm not even putting this on McDavid, because I think, how many assists does he have now? Like 30 something? Like he's in a ridiculous territory. But the stat that's impressive to me about McDavid, Wish, is that he has still factored in goal or assist this entire postseason on at least half of the Oilers' goals. This is not on McDavid. He hasn't scored in this series, but how can you lay blame on Connor McDavid if he's still finding ways somehow, some way to contribute for his team?
And that stat you just cited, just to put it within context, since the expansion era began in 1967-68, only one other player in NHL postseason history has had a point on 50% or more of his team's goals. That's Wayne Gretzky in 1988. That's the territory where McDavid is right now. Look, Connor is going to get an enormous amount of criticism, like a first take on Dak Prescott level of criticism if the Oilers get swept. There's no question about that. He's a star. He hasn't, he's gotten his points in the series, but he's not taken over a game like we saw in Game 6 against Dallas. Some of it's going to be warranted. I think the power play's abject failure in this series relies very heavily on Connor, but others have been worse. And I think that goes without saying, but there's no question that people are going to look at the goal total and look at the win total and say this is going to be McDavid's failure. And I'm with you, man. Like, when you're got a point on like 50% or more of the team's goals, I don't know how much blame should go to McDavid in this series.
Couple of rapid fire questions for you about Game 3. Sasha Barkov, we didn't even know up until almost the limit whether he would even play in Game 3 after the hit by Leon Draisaitl in Game 2. He did play, and he was great. Let's contextualize that. How great was he in Game 3 and, quite frankly, in this series?
He's been awesome in the series. He was brilliant in Game 3. I mean, the breakaway goal was awesome. He was hard on the walls. He was playing tough. He was playing big. He was still affecting the game defensively. What was interesting about this action shifting to Edmonton was that the expectation was that McDavid was going to pop off because his line was going to get away from Barkov. Well, it turns out, as Paul Maurice indicated before this game, it's not just McDavid not playing against Barkov. It's also Barkov not playing against McDavid. And by that, he means that Barkov's line now has the chance to get their offense on without having to worry about defending McDavid. And lo and behold, what do we see tonight? It clicked for them. So he's awesome. Now, I know we're going to talk about it. We might as well just get to it. Conn Smythe. I think there's a really interesting debate happening right now amongst the voters. I got to be honest with you. I've talked to a number of them here in the press box.
Okay.
Bobrovsky's the favorite right now, minus 450 to win the Conn Smythe. And I could see why. The normies at home see Game 1. They see Game 3. They say, how do you not give it to this man? He's obviously the reason they're winning. Barkov's at plus 400. And I got to tell you, I have talked to some people that are going to be involved in the voting who are pretty adamant that Alexander Barkov is the MVP of this Panthers team. I was as surprised as you. I think for a lot of people, they think it's said and done. I think I think Bobrovsky may have won the Conn Smythe in Game 1, but I would not be shocked if Barkov gets his flowers, leading the team in scoring, being as effective as he's been defensively, shutting down McDavid. I think there's a lane for him, and I think he's going to maybe steal it from Bobrovsky.
I can see that happening. I would still give it to Bobrovsky, but I can understand where the debate is coming from. So
okay, let's talk before we go on about delusion. We talk about delusion for a second. Delusion is Kris Knoblauch. Delusion is Kris Knoblauch.
I was wondering if you'd bring this up. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, after Game 3, he's sitting in front of the media. They're all trying to find sunshine and rainbows in this thing. Like Stuart Skinner's, if anyone can do it, it's the oil. They're all trying to find the rallying cries. Obviously, he's a coach. He's going to have to be as positive as possible. Kris Knoblauch said, I think we've showed that we can beat this team. Okay, that's great. That's a very interesting comment. Let's see how they've showed they can beat this team. The Edmonton Oilers are now 0-5 against the Florida Panthers this season, regular season and playoffs. They have been outscored 21-8 by the Florida Panthers. Their power play, the best in the world, 37% effective in the playoffs before the series, has now gone 0-for-22 against the Florida Panthers penalty kill. They have not shown anything except they keep losing to the Panthers in spectacular fashion all season. So I'm all for belief. I'm all for rah-rah. We've had winning streaks during the regular season before, but don't sit there and tell me you've showed me anything that comes close to defeating the Florida Panthers, because it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, those stats are pretty telling. Very good point. And by the way, I think they're 0-10 in this series.
They are. They are.
So why is
Yeah.
that though? What are the Panthers doing that, other than Bobrovsky making great saves? Because there were a couple of opportunities. Like, the Oilers did have their chances with the man advantage in this game, but they didn't score. So why are they not being able to convert?
They're really taking away Connor's ability to find people. When this power play works its best, he's like Magic Johnson out there. Like, he's skating around, he's seeing plays before they happen. And the Panthers are just doing a really good job of anticipating what McDavid's going to do and what this Oilers power play is going to do. And that's why McDavid had that great line before game 3 about how they've got to think of it more 5-on-5, less structured, play a little road hockey, he said. We didn't really see too much of that tonight because the Panthers, again, have just done a really good job anticipating what the Oilers do on the power play. It's one of the reasons they haven't scored against the Panthers all season on the power play. But let's not diminish Bobrovsky. This is where I think Bobrovsky has his best MVP case, which is as the primary penalty killer for this team. And by that, I mean the whole point of this penalty killer for Florida is to try to create lanes so Bob can see the puck really well. And when Bob can see the puck really well, he is so athletic and so quick, he can come over and compensate for breakdowns defensively. And that's what we saw in that Draisaitl play. That save, were it not for the bobbery early in the playoffs, that might be the save of the playoffs right there. Just making the save with his arm, sliding over, stopping a shot that has been as effective as maybe anything outside of Ovechkin's shot from the circle that we've seen in the NHL as far as just consistency. He's been awesome. And I think he's at the heart of that PK, and the PK has mastered one of the best power plays we've ever seen.
Yes, that's a great point. I also, actually, it comes to mind, I don't know if this was on the man advantage or not, but McDavid slid a puck under his pad from behind the net to Ryan McLeod, but then Bobrovsky still made the pad save. Like, it was like, for sure you thought that was a golden opportunity, and then Bobrovsky still found a way to make the save.
Bob has haters. I was talking to our friend Thomas Drance earlier today on the radio, and we were back and forth, and Drance believes that Bob is mid. There's a lot of people that think Bob is mid. His stats aren't of the same quality as some of the other goalies that have won the Conn Smythe, and I'll admit that, sure. But when you watch these games and you see, let me put it this way. When the Oilers make mistakes, it ends up in the back of their net, including one their goalie made tonight, which was egregious. When the Panthers make mistakes, Bob's there. He's been there every single time there's a breakdown. So even when the Oilers do get their chances, and like Draisaitl told me tonight, they've gotten their chances, breakaways, point-blank shots, clear looks at Bobrovsky. He's been there. And I think there's something to be said for that. And ultimately, that could be the difference between losing and winning the Stanley Cup, is having someone there to pick you up when you fall down.
So that's our Game 3 conversation. Remember, of course, Game 4 Saturday night. And, of course, we will have an episode of The Drop after that game, which could quite possibly see the raising of the Stanley Cup if the Florida Panthers win.
Well, so you say, but if anyone can do it, Arda, it's the Oil. And by do it, I mean send a bunch of miserable journalists hurtling thousands of miles back to Florida to witness the inevitable elimination of the Edmonton Oilers in 5 or 6 games.
Maybe it will be Utah HC in this position at some point in the future. We got some Utah NHL team news for at least the next season. They will be known as Utah HC. We got a color scheme. We got jersey designs. This was an interesting news drop out of Salt Lake City today.
Kind of unexpected. And by unexpected, I mean we found out about it about an hour before the release went out, but that's okay. News moves fast. Shout out to Utah for including us all in the process, though, because it was very interesting news. Utah Hockey Club will be the name of the team temporarily for their first season next season. Keep in mind, the next round of voting closes on June 20th for the names that are still in contention. That would be Mammoth, Yeti, Outlaws, Blizzard, the Blizzy, the Zard, Venom, and of course, Utah Hockey Club still involved there. There's a theory I think my friend Ryan Lambert has, that they're going to try to just condition fans to get used to Utah Hockey Club, and maybe that'll end up being the name. I don't believe it. I think they'll end up with, like, Yeti probably will be the name, but this will be the name for year 1. But most importantly, Arda, we now know what the colors for this team are going to be beyond year 1. These are the colors in year 1. The jersey's going to say Utah. It's going to be colored in these colors, but then they're going to carry over to whatever color scheme they have for the eventual mascot or nickname for this team. So let me run down the colors for you, Arda. You tell me your thoughts on this stuff, because there is nothing I love more than design and PR staffs creating a bunch of nonsense about the things that they put on jerseys. The black, which is going to be the primary color of their home jersey, we'll get to that in a second, is rock black, representing the darkness of night in the mountains and the volcanic rock of Utah's deserts. Your thoughts, Arda?
I don't like a primary black jersey. I wish that it was one of the other colors you will mention, but okay, fine. Rock black,
I agree.
sure. But here's the other thing. Can I just say one thing? When I think of rocks in Utah, I don't think of the color black. Now, I'm not from Utah. I think of that like, I think of that desert red. I think of that like sunset red.
Yeah. You know what the problem with that is? Guess who had that? The Coyotes. Can't use it. It's already been taken.
Right.
By the way, the real reason they're doing these colors is because they want them to match up with the color rebrand of the Utah Jazz, which of course Ryan and Ashley Smith also own. Salt white, illustrating both the snow on Utah's peaks and the famous salt flats. Salt white. I've never in my life heard white. You don't go to the paint store and grab the sample and be like, salt white for the walls?
Give me the salt white, yeah. I also love that it's salt white, but it's also snow.
Right.
So it's like two different descriptors. Got it. Okay, yes.
And then finally, mountain blue, a representation of Utah's rich winter sports history and its clear skies for more than 230 days a year. I don't know what that number means, which is somebody from Utah can tell me, but mountain blue, salt white, rock black, all rejected names for NXT wrestlers, but also the colors, the colors of the Utah team. I'm with you, dude. The black primary color for their home jersey makes this entire thing look so create a jersey template. It's a bummer. They have this beautiful blue that they could have made as their primary color for their home jerseys. I would have preferred that so much more than the black.
I absolutely would have wanted a mountain blue primary jersey, and there's still time. Now, here's the thing. This is just like the PWHL, right? The PWHL in year one didn't have nicknames, didn't have mascots. They used city names, just like Utah's doing. I'm fine with that. But just like the PWHL, I hope that we do, and it looks like Utah is putting those pieces in place. I hope we eventually get to nicknames. And more importantly, like you've said on many of those names, mascots, extremely important.
Look, we gave the PWHL a lot of grief for what they did, and Utah deserves the same. There's absolutely no reason why this team can't have a name by September, okay? And if you don't, if the reason is you can't create a jersey with a logo on it, that's fine. We understand that. There's a time constraint. These things take time. You know what you could probably make? A patch with a logo or a name or something on it to indicate that you are not just Utah Hockey Club. You could easily do that by September. So I'm gonna give the Smiths grief on this one. Should have a name by now. You had plenty of time. You had all summer to figure out what it is you do, in the words of the Chunky sketch, and I think you should leave.
Okay, fair enough. It didn't bother me as much as I thought it would in the PWHL. So maybe that's what's coloring my thoughts, but fair. Yes, you're right. We did.
And when you say color your thoughts, are they salt white or mountain blue? The color
definitely a rock black, actually. Yes. Other news items that dropped since our last podcast. We got some news about St. Louis Blues GM Doug Armstrong. He signed an extension through the 2028-29 season. But interesting there, Wish, also is that Alex Steen, former St. Louis Blue, has been promoted to special assistant to the general manager through the 25-26 season, but then he will become GM eventually.
Yeah. So I'm of two minds here. Either Doug Armstrong is setting himself up for life as a president of hockey operations, overseeing the organization, never in fear of being fired. That could be one idea behind this. But the other idea behind this is that they probably would not let Doug Armstrong leave for another job unless they had a succession plan, unless they had someone that they trusted, that had his seal of approval, that he helped tutelage and tutor to become the new GM, and then maybe he could leave. So it's either he's there for a long time or this is the Doug Armstrong exit plan, one of the two.
Congratulations to the succession plan of the 2019 Stanley Cup champion, Alex Steen. The San Jose Sharks have promoted Ryan Warsofsky to become the team's 11th head coach in their franchise history. He's 36. He was an assistant in the past 2 seasons for San Jose. previously had been head coach of the Chicago Wolves in the AHL for 2 seasons. He led the Wolves to the AHL's best regular season record, 50-16-5-5, and he captured the 2022 Calder Cup. Your thoughts on this coaching acquisition?
It's an interesting one. You know, first of all, I've never heard anyone with a negative word to say about this guy and his abilities. I think he's one of those rock star young coaches that was going to get a job someplace. And they're probably smart to give it to him before he had to leave and get it somewhere else. I'm a little intrigued by Mike Grier, the GM's call here of going with a younger coach that's going to grow with the team instead of maybe getting an older coach that's going to be able to be, you know, a teacher for Macklin Celebrini and for Will Smith and for the younger players in that roster. You could have gone either way, and I find this way pretty interesting versus what would be the more traditional path, I think.
Yeah, for sure. But if Ryan has been with the organization, I think that's a really, it's always cool to see people promoted internally. It's always cool to see first-time NHL head coaches. And it's always, especially in a situation where it could be very difficult. And by the way, David Quinn joining Pittsburgh Penguins as an assistant coach, so he lands on his feet in a way as well.
Just for the record, as a Wyshynski, I know when someone's punted on the last name. You called the man Ryan. You didn't want to take on the last name again. It's happened to me in my life. It actually happened to me on the Utah Zoom call earlier, where they were doing a roll call to see if we could all embargo the news, and they just said Greg. They didn't say my last name. They just said Greg. And I saw it then too.
How dare you, sir? I did go with the Warsofsky, okay? And by the way, plenty of people get Arda wrong, and that's 4 letters, okay?
Dude, I completely agree.
Last thing, Columbus Blue Jackets. This is from TSN Hockey Insider Pierre LeBrun. The Blue Jackets and Patrik Laine, the marriage is over? What's happening?
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like Laine and his reps want to maybe get him a change in scenery. Obviously, with Don Waddell as the new GM, maybe they can facilitate that. Shout out to Eric Tulsky, by the way, who's going to get that gig that Waddell left in Carolina. It's probably good for him to get a change of scenery, a change of pace, and hopefully get his career back on track. But bringing up Laine real quick reminds me, I wrote about Matthew Tkachuk and his rivalry with the Edmonton Oilers this week. I completely forgot, Arda, the sliding doors moment of Matthews first, Laine, right? Puljujärvi was going to go third to Columbus. Columbus drafts Dubois, and now the Oilers have a choice of either Puljujärvi or Matthew Tkachuk. They were ready to draft Tkachuk before the Blue Jackets took Dubois, and they take Puljujärvi instead. Tkachuk falls to the Flames, and the rest, as they say, is history. What a moment that would have been. Connor has a cup by now if Tkachuk was his teammate. That's my prediction.
Wow. Yeah, the landscape would have been incredibly different. You are absolutely right about that. And things could be actually the same, quite frankly, on Saturday. If the Florida Panthers continue their winning ways, they will have the difference of having won the Stanley Cup and raising it. And we will talk about that celebration if they do so on Saturday. Remember, the game is at 8 p.m. on ABC. Wish is there with full coverage. He's also here, of course, on The Drop, writing for ESPN.com. So we will see you after Game 4, no matter what happens, here on The Drop.
Take care.